Okay, what's up, everyone in On-Ramps? Today I want to talk a little bit about Bacon's Rebellion, and this is going to come from 1.6. So you did have a journal entry with 1.6, so make sure you're aware of that. And from 1.6, we had a reading from Howard Zinn, chapter 3 of his book, Persons of Mean and Vile Condition. And the main person that we're going to focus on is a person called Nathaniel Bacon, and he was someone who did lead a rebellion in the Virginia colony. Excuse me. So we're going to talk about why his rebellion was important. What is he angry about? Why are there so many problems? And there's going to be a big change that kind of happens from Bacon's rebellion. It's not necessarily a good change. It's what we call an unintended consequence, where African slavery continues to grow, where Bacon's rebellion is one more thing that proves that the system of using white indentured servants is going to lead to problems and not work in the long run. Okay, so what we have here is a primary source description of Nathaniel Bacon. We'll just call him Bacon. Basically just saying he's vulgar, he's not educated, but he fits right in. Most of these people in these colonies were not educated. He says that his heart, he was able to get these people to follow him, negligent, wicked, all kinds of things. He's not known as a nice guy. And one of the techniques he used to help get more people to follow him is brandy. Maybe he got them drunk and got them even more angry and more upset. Okay, so who's Bacon upset with? He's really upset at two different groups. One is he lives on the edge of town, where they frequently run into problems with Indians. So he wants help in getting rid of the Indians because there were Indian wars going on. But he's also mad at the people who run these colonies, because the people who run these colonies kind of sort of work, for rich people back in England, and they have all the money, all the power, and they're leaving everyone else just out there to struggle. Okay, so most of these people are struggling, and he wants help. So we've talked about the tactic called divide and conquer, and we're going to see these colonial leaders use that. They're worried about the Indians, so what do? They put the poor whites in between the Indians. Well, who's going to fight? The poor whites and the Indians will be the ones killing each other, while the rich, leaders in the colony in the middle of the town are going to be fine. Well, Bacon doesn't like that. And he calls these people these aristocrats. They're kind of looked down upon, these wealthy. They have almost all of the money. But what the aristocrats do, they just put the poor whites on the edge of town next to the Indians and let those two groups fight each other while they can just stay rich and mind their own business. But Bacon doesn't let them mind their own business. Okay, so that's kind of explains how some of the issues work. Now, Bacon and some of his people, we got little things going on, little fights. We have a tribe of Indians that came in and stole some hogs because they felt they were owed some money. Well, then the whites go back. They want their hogs back. They kill two Indians. And then the Indians strike back. And they kill a white, who then come back and kill more Indians. And then the raids start raiding. And basically it's going back and forth. They're fighting. So these poor whites, they want help. They feel like they're being taxed more, which the taxes are supposed to pay for these wars. But then they also feel like at the same time, the rich people that want the money to pay for the wars are simultaneously asking them to fight the war and pay the taxes. Okay, so it kind of pisses them off. Okay, so just to know about 1676 in the colonies, times were tough. Most of these people were struggling. They were poor. Even most of the whites were poor. It said they were miserable. One guy says 6 parts of 7 were poor and indebted, discontented, and armed. So that means they're poor, they owe money, they're mad, and they have guns. That is a bad combination, y'all. Bacon himself came from this class. However, Bacon did have some land, and I think Bacon, because he had land, he wanted to protect it, and he did want to kill Indians. He felt Indians were a threat to what he thought was his land out there in the edge of town, and he blamed the rich white leadership. He blamed the governor, Berkeley, this guy Berkeley. Um, so what did Bacon do? He gets upset and he just forms his own militia, gets his own people, his own soldiers. They're not an official army, but they're Bacon's army, and they begin to go raiding armies. Okay, so this shows the people want to rise up. We call this populace. This would be like the masses. They resent the rich. They also hate the Indians, so they hate two groups. So these poor whites are just angry. They feel like they're being taxed high, and they have to fight the war, and they're not getting help. And they start going attacking. So they attack this Indian group, and we call these friendly Indians. They killed some. They took their possessions, things like that. And that upsets the governor. That upsets Berkeley. Okay. So both sides we have desertions. You have desertions when people are on a side, but they don't feel committed. They want to leave. Okay. Now, so what happens to Bacon? He does die young, and he does die in this rebellion, but he actually dies from other causes, not from fighting or anything, lice. And here's kind of a cold type of quote. He is dead, and I am sorry at my heart that lice and flux should take the hangman's part. Basically saying, too bad he died from lice because they wanted to hang him. They didn't like Bacon at all. Okay, so this rebellion does not last long. The governor has to call England for help. They send guns, they send soldiers across the ocean. This shows you that England wants to regulate control. They overcome some of these rebel leaders. They hang them. Today that might be cruel and unusual punishment, but it happened there. And we have this lots of oppression. It's not one group oppressing another. There's multiple levels of oppression. The Indians, who do they get oppressed by? These poor whites out on the frontier that want them land. Okay, well, the poor whites, they're also being oppressed because they're being taxed at a high level from the rich whites, and they're also being told that they have to live on the outside of town, knowing in this area they're going to have conflict with Indians. So there's different oppression going on. Even this governor that Bacon's upset with had complained about it to England years before. When you have this system, y'all, 40,000 people are in poverty, and then you have like 50 families or so that are really, really rich. Well, eventually these people in poverty are going to rebel. They're not going to do that. And they do. And most Virginians, the average person, supported it. Okay, here's a word maybe you should pay attention to. It's called leveling. Okay, leveling is basically what we have somewhat today as far as 2020. Equalizing the wealth. So they wanted leveling. They didn't feel it was fair that these very few families had almost all the money back, getting it from England, supported from England, while everybody else was struggling. Today we have leveling still going on. It's a big issue. A lot of times we talk about it as far as race go. Equality of income is not equal in the United States among races. You have Asian Americans at the top, and then you have white Americans also near the top. Definitely having the most power because there are more people. And then you see other races not making as much money. So a lot of people say that's not fair. We need leveling. Well, same arguments back then for the people that were struggling. They wanted leveling as well. All right. So who are these whites? They're poor. They're miserable. They came from Europe. They were the people a lot of times in Europe, the deplorables, the people that were not wanted or liked, sometimes begging. Some of them wanted to work, but just didn't have the education to make good money. Why not send them overseas? And that's what happens. Most of them come over as indentured servants. Okay, they sign a contract, they get to come here, they work for a master, and then they are free. But what happens when they're freed? They've got a weapon, they have no education, they have no money. What do? And what we're going to see is they cause problems. Okay, so the end result of this, y'all, as these poor whites, these servants, as they begin to get freed, they want to move up. They're tired of being poor. They do have weapons, and they do often want to fight. They get mean. They complain. And the unfortunate side effect of this is the colonies eventually began to figure out they cannot control this white population. So then they began to turn their attention to Africa, where they could more easily place means to control these populations and what eventually becomes to slavery. So that is going to be an unfortunate, unintended consequence of Bacon's rebellion. So try to learn.